1 minute to spare. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Thursday. I almost said Wednesday. Thank you for joining us again. Like I said, for these webinars, these are great opportunities for us to educate our community. So we really appreciate the opportunity of being able to do this. So there we go. Okay, some people are trickling in. 1 more minute and then I will get this show on the road because there's a lot to cover in this webinar. I know this is a very popular topic. I think this is our most attended webinar, so I'm sure some people will be joining as the conversation gets kicked off. And just as a reference for you guys, these webinars do get put on our YouTube channel, but the benefit of joining them live is obviously getting to experience the information in real time, as well as having a Q&A at the end, which I will touch on in the intro a little bit more, but there is a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions that you think of while we are recording, please feel free to put them in the chat, or there's a Q&A section. I don't really have a preference because I know it's confusing to tell you to go one place or another. So don't feel like you got to go to the right spot. I promise I will get to them and get everything answered. But with that said, we are at noon Central Time on the dot. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off. So you are listening to the Restart CBD webinar on new cannabinoid on the market, Hemp Derived Delta 9 THC. My name is Shada Tarabi, and I am one of the founders of Restart CBD. So let's get right to it. Who is Restart CBD? For those of you who might be newer to our brand, welcome to our little corner of the world. We are founded by sisters. So we're a sister-owned brand. As you can see this picture, this is me and my two younger sisters. I am the oldest, and we started our brand in 2018, headquartered here in Austin, Texas. We were one of the first operators to actually operate a cannabis business officially in the state of Texas. So this year will be our 4th year in business. I was last year voted the best cannabis educator, influencer, and advocate. I like to mention that just as another little, affirmation of you are listening to someone who spends a lot of time making sure that this information is digestible and easy to understand. And so that is my hope with these webinars and really any content that we put together at Restart CBD is we want to make sure that it is educating you guys first and foremost. We were also voted the best CBD shop by the Statesman and the Chronicle. And we are also the #1 rated shop on Yelp and Google. So again, just more affirmation of who we are and what we try to deliver when it comes to quality cannabis products and quality education. And so that's kind of who Restart CBD is. We do have a brick and mortar retail location. I know some of you might have been to our physical store. We just have one location in North Austin up by the Domain. But for those of you, sometimes customers don't realize that we also ship our products. So we do ship to all 50 states, depending on the product. Some of you might be more familiar with like the PACT Act or certain products like Delta 8. Sometimes some states have illegalized that, but for the most part, we do ship our products nationwide. So you can shop with us in store or check us out online. And we also offer curbside pickup for someone who maybe doesn't want to come into the store, or you're just driving through that part of town and you want to just order online and pick it up and go. We also have that available. So getting into today's topic, shopping for cannabis can be overwhelming. We totally understand that, but with the help of Restart CBD, it doesn't have to be. So again, just really want to emphasize, we are here to educate and really want to communicate and level up this cannabis conversation, especially with the community, with our consumers. And there's so much misinformation. There's just a lack of research in general when it comes to cannabis products. And so I think for us, it really is important to try to help cut through that noise. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to tune in and to educate yourselves, because this is, how that information continues to get shared. I also like to mention, I'm especially talking about this topic, just being Delta 8 THC, which we'll get into, how it's derived and things like that. But I'm going to repeat this. This is a disclaimer. I'm not a doctor or a lawyer, and I encourage you to do further research on everything that I share. At the end of the presentation, I'll provide more resources for you to continue to explore your canna curiosity. But again, this is not legal advice or medical advice. So please treat as educational purposes and continue to always do more research. This is a little note, like I mentioned when we were first kicking things off. If you have a question, add them to the chat because I will answer them at the end. And I want to make sure that, sometimes like when you're going through presentations and you're like, oh, I have a really good question, like right now, I'm not going to stop the presentation to answer questions, but I will make time for the end. So if you have something that you want to ask, make sure you stick around so that you can take advantage of that. And I want to make sure that we address questions. But here is the topic that we are intending to address today. What is Delta 9 THC? So Delta 9 THC is a cannabinoid, and it stands for Delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol. Other kind of, market names, it goes by D9 or Delta 9. And really, kind of, if you look at cannabis historically, when people refer to THC, they're usually referring to Delta 9 THC, even though now I'm sure some of you who are our customers or just cannabis consumers, you've heard of Delta 8 THC, there's Delta 10 THC, there's now THCV. But when people usually refer to THC, they're thinking of Delta 9, and it's that psychotropic cannabinoid. Raphael Mechoulam, who you might have heard of, he is very well known in the cannabis industry. He is responsible for kind of a couple things. He originally discovered Delta 9 THC in 1964. He is an Israeli researcher and scientist. He also discovered the endocannabinoid system. So kind of the reason that cannabis works in our bodies is because of this endocannabinoid system, hence CBD, THC, those are cannabinoids. And so you can see kind of where they all fit in with each other. Again, kind of one of the things that marks Delta 9 THC is it is usually associated with a high sensation. And that's because it is a psychoactive cannabinoid. And again, cannabinoids are compounds that are found in the cannabis plant. And Delta 9 THC, this is kind of like where this presentation gets really interesting and what I really want you guys to kind of be mindful of. Delta 9 THC can be both hemp and marijuana derived. Just like CBD, CBD is found in both hemp and marijuana. Delta 9 THC is found in both hemp and marijuana. And so I think that's really what adds to the murkiness of its legality. And that's certainly what I want to try to address today. And just to kind of like remind you guys, the chemical compound doesn't change. So whether it comes from hemp or marijuana, that chemical compound structure is going to remain consistent. So this is an example scientifically of what the cannabinoid compound of Delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol actually looks like. So when you're consuming edibles or other cannabis products, these are, kind of what they're responsible for looking like. They're chemical compounds that are interacting with our endocannabinoid systems. So I think it would be amiss to not touch on a little bit of the history, because I think Delta 9 is one of those cannabinoids that people are like, wait, I thought it was illegal. I thought it was legal. What's like going on? Is marijuana legal in Texas now all of a sudden? And it's a little bit more mysterious than that. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, unfortunately. And so again, this presentation is intended to help educate you to kind of make sense of some of those things. But again, in that effort, I think it's really important to understand the history of cannabis, kind of like then and now. So back in 1972, Attorney General John Mitchell of the Nixon administration placed marijuana on the federal scheduled drug list in 1972. There's some other, again, nuances to the story. And I encourage you to go do, continued like research and deep dive into history of like, well, why is, marijuana a Schedule I drug? And there's certainly some propaganda and some other aspects of the narrative of how cannabis like got here to being a scheduled drug. But nonetheless, it was a scheduled drug in 1972, and specifically Schedule I drugs, this is the interesting part, are deemed to have no medical use and a high potential for abuse. So if you're like, well, why is marijuana on the Schedule I list anyways? Well, it's because in 1972, they decided that it had no medical benefit, which is interesting because if you put something on the Schedule I drug list, it makes it really difficult for research to actually happen. So we missed a lot of years where we were actually researching cannabis to prove otherwise, that it perhaps might have some medicinal benefit or at least therapeutic benefits. And then the second point is to kind of bring you into present day. So from 1972 until 1996, California was actually the first state authorized to sell medical marijuana. So going from cannabis is not medical to the state of California decided that it was medical. And now as of 22, there are actually 19 recreational states. So another thing to note, some states can be medical marijuana only, and some states are adult use recreation. has a medical program, but it is very infant. So it's kind of one of those progressions that I think that we're going to need to have a better medical program in Texas before you start seeing adult use recreation legalized. So when I say there are 19 states legalized, that means recreation. It means you don't need a medical card. You can go to Colorado, you can go to California, you can now go to Nevada, you can go to Las Vegas and buy cannabis in a similar fashion as maybe you come shop at Restart CBD, but you're certainly being able to go into these dispensaries and purchase really, again, the differentiation is higher THC products. So I wanted to include this because as I was doing some research, and I will make sure to send this deck out. Our team will send this out to everybody who signed up. And so we want to make sure that you guys have access to these links and resources to further, dig in. But this is from an article, The Science Behind the DEA's Long War on Marijuana. And I just wanted to kind of read it for you to, again, set the tone of this interesting intersection of, is cannabis medicine? And if it is perhaps somewhat used for a medical purpose, then why is it a Schedule I drug, and why is it kind of in the position that it's in? But of course, cannabis has medical use, says University of California, San Francisco integrative oncologist Donald Abrams, one of the few researchers who have been able to obtain extremely limited government-approved supplies of research cannabis for human trials. So that's really interesting, right? Because again, when we're talking about it being a Schedule I drug, it's, do we have access to even research this? And so this, kind of short, abbreviated sentiment says and articulates that it's very difficult to actually obtain government approved supplies to research cannabis on human trials. So I think with hemp's legalization, you're seeing more research coming to market, and I will share some research reports that touch on Delta 9 THC, just to give you, again, some more science research and backing. But it's one of those things that it's still so fairly new in the United States and really in the world. So with that said, it's pretty clear from anthropological and archaeological evidence that cannabis has been used as a medicine for thousands of years, and it was a medicine in the US until 1942. So also, when you're kind of doing cannabis research and history, it's really remarkable. You can even see some of the major medical companies like Bayer, who makes aspirin, among other drugs. There are actually really old photographs of these brands who were actually using products that had cannabis cannabinoids or compounds concocted in it, and we're using it as medicine and medical applications. So it's really interesting, again, kind of through the propaganda and just different iterations of ultimately scare tactics that cannabis ended up in this position. So one of the fun things that I really appreciate about my job at Restart CBD and our position as a business leader is to be able to help reshape some of those thoughts and mentalities, to help destigmatize those conversations. And so again, I should appreciate you guys being here to kind of learn some of this, because I think it's really fascinating and it's stuff that you don't really hear a lot being discussed. So he adds, I'm an oncologist and I say all the time, not a day goes by when I'm not recommending cannabis to patients for nausea, loss of appetite, pains, insomnia, and depression. So again, I think it's very murky, kind of getting into what can I actually use cannabis for? And that's where I'm not a medical professional. I encourage you to always, check with your doctor, but there are anecdotal opinions by true medical professionals who are suggesting that cannabis, and specifically Delta 9 THC, does actually have some benefit to it. So again, just kind of keep that in mind as we're going through the presentation. So I think it's really important to touch on, again, I was talking about the endocannabinoid system, and what I really wanted to also drive home is kind of how Delta 9 kind of fits into that equation, right? So Delta 9 THC is a chemical compound, AKA a cannabinoid, which is found in hemp and marijuana. And hemp and marijuana are both referred to as cannabis. So sometimes you might think oh, these words are so confusing. I personally, and at Restart, we think of cannabis as the parent term. And then there's hemp and marijuana, or I'm kind of backwards, just say hemp and marijuana, make sure I'm staying on the right sides for you guys from a visual perspective. And really the classification from a legal perspective is that hemp is anything less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC by weight, and marijuana is anything more than 0.3% Delta 9 THC. So there are actually hundreds of compounds found in the cannabis plant, which are again called cannabinoids, because they interact with receptors involved in a variety of functions like appetite and anxiety and depression and pain sensation. Those receptors are referred to as our endocannabinoid system and specifically associate with our CB1 and CB2 receptors. And I'll quickly plug, maybe you joined us for one of our first webinars where we were talking about the endocannabinoid system. If you want to check those out, our YouTube is a great resource, youtube.com/restart CBD, where I have a whole webinar dedicated to talk about our endocannabinoid system. But really briefly, Delta 9 affects the CB1 receptor. So if you can imagine maybe times that you've experienced Delta 9 THC, how that's made you feel. And so in this case, CB1 receptors affect motor activity, thinking, motor coordination, appetite, short-term memory, pain perception, and immune cells. So just something to kind of keep in mind as you are exploring different cannabinoids may affect different receptors. And that's kind of how it functionally is working within our bodies and our unique biochemistries. So now I wanted to get into just a couple of the studies. Again, I've included direct links at the bottom of these presentations to go take you. As you can see, this one is kind of coming from PubMed. I try to find research that is actually associated to, a government entity, because that means it's like government research associated. And so this is by PubMed, which is associated with the government. And this one is the good and the bad effects of trans Delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol on humans. So the gist of this, and this is like the abstract of it. If you click the link, you'll go into like the full research and analysis and kind of all the different aspects of the actual research. But this analyzed the therapeutic usefulness of Delta 9 THC and its potential to induce adverse reactions on humans. During the last 30 years, an enormous amount of research was carried out, resulting in the disclosure of the cannabinoid system in central nervous system with its CB1 and CB2 receptors and the agonist anandamide. Say some of these medical things, a couple times, our head starts to spin. I'm going to kind of, skip around just under the clinical point of view. Delta 9 THC produces some therapeutic benefits, which are beyond reasonable doubt. So again, this is an official medical research report that is saying without a reasonable doubt, there is some benefit to Delta 9 THC from a medical perspective. Thus, the effects on nausea due to cancer chemotherapy, as an appetite promoter, on some painful conditions, and on symptoms of multiple sclerosis are clearly demonstrated. Delta 9 THC is not devoid of ill effects on the cognitive domain. It impairs the human capacity to discriminate time intervals and space distances, vigilance, memory, and the performance for mental work. So what this means to me is, yes, there are some positive attributes and there are some perhaps negative detriments to consuming THC. So you might be someone who consumes THC and you're like, well, I hate that I forget things and I can't remember anything, because it does affect your CB1 receptors and then therefore it does affect, your short-term memory. So kind of keep that in mind as we go through these conversations, because I don't want everybody to ever think that cannabis is all, perfect plants, rainbows. It's going to make you feel infinitely better 100% of the time. There are, side effects, adverse effects. I wouldn't say side effects to the extent of perhaps maybe medication, but just want people to be mindful, every cannabinoid is not for everyone. You might be someone out there in the audience who's like, I've tried Delta 9 THC and I didn't like feeling high. I don't like feeling the psychotropic or psychoactive effects. That's okay. That's why there are other cannabinoids that you might find more beneficial, or maybe it comes down to the ratio. How many milligrams of Delta 9 THC are you taking, and what is the consumption method? So it's not always meant to be an explicit thing. Again, everybody's body is different. And so it just really comes down to how your body is ultimately going to react with these cannabinoids. But again, the point of these reports is really to show some validity to the topic that we are talking about today. So I'm going to go on to the next one, Delta 9 THC in the treatment of spasticity associated with multiple sclerosis. Marijuana is reported to decrease spasticity in patients with multiple sclerosis. This is a double-blind, placebo-controlled crossover clinical trial. What I thought was really interesting about this one that I wanted to point out, which again, kind of going off of my previous statement, sometimes it's really difficult to know, well, just consuming Delta 9 THC is like half of the coin. The other half of the coin is consistency, dosage, consumption method again. So this study gave a really good introduction of perhaps a range, right? A dosing range, which again, I'm not a medical professional. I cannot say, take this amount of milligrams and you're going to feel the effects or feel better. That's absolutely not what our intention is. And we don't ever want to steer people into explicits. It really is a unique journey that you, your loved ones, your friends, whoever is consuming these products needs to be mindful of. It takes time in figuring out. And so just based on this, it says receiving escalating doses. So again, they're playing around and seeing between 2.5 milligrams to 15 milligrams and 5 days of THC and 5 days of placebo in a randomized order. And so subjects' rating of spasticity and side effects were completed, and semi-quantitative neurological examinations were performed. At doses greater than 7.5 milligrams, there was improvement in patient ratings of spasticity compared to the placebo. So sometimes it comes up that people are like, well, I tried it and it didn't work for me. Well, did you try, doubling the dose? Did you try tripling the dose? In this case, they started with 2.5 milligrams and then they went up to 7.5 milligrams. So again, just using it even anecdotally, it's not an explicit science. It's not, okay, well, I took product A and I'm going to have effect B. You really have to kind of work with these cannabinoids because there's just so much, personal variance based on what you're taking it for and ultimately what your biochemistry is. And then kind of the third report that I'll pull up is tetrahydrocannabinol treatment in chronic central neuropathic pain and fibromyalgia patients. Central neuropathic pain is difficult to treat, but Delta-9 THC may be a promising therapeutic agent. They administered in 172 patients on average, again, that 7.5 milligrams of Delta-9. This time, instead of 5 days, it was 7 months. Of these, 48 patients prematurely withdrew due to side effects, insufficient analgesia, or expensive therapy. So there could be multiple reasons. It couldn't just be the Delta-9 THC. It could be the expensive therapy. Thus, 124 patients were assessed retrospectively in a multicellular telephone survey. Reported changes in pain intensity recorded on a numeric scale, pain disability index, medical outcomes, short form, quality of life impairment by pain, hospital anxiety, depression scale, and amount of concomitant pain medication were recorded. And pain intensity improved significantly during Delta-9 THC treatment. Opioid doses were reduced and patients received THC therapy as effective with tolerable side effects. About 25% of the patients, however, did not tolerate the treatment. Therapy success and tolerance can be assessed by a transient Delta-9 THC titration and its maintained administration for several weeks. Again, to me, this is saying that there shows some medical prospect for cannabis and specifically Delta-9 THC to be efficacious. And so it really just comes down to, yes, there are more reports being done, and there are hopefully going to continue to be more, especially as we go towards more states legalizing. Remember, we said there are 19 states that have access to recreational marijuana, and there's 50 states in the United States. So we're not even quite at 50% yet. And we're also trying to actively go for federal legalization, which would very much speed up the access to not only for sure more research, but so many other ripples of effects of bringing cannabis to the market for people to have access to. So this is where we get into, like, the beginning of the webinar was definitely addressing, like, what is Delta-9 THC and why would I take Delta-9 THC? And what if I don't like being high? And I've tried it before, but I don't know really how it's made me feel. And maybe it wasn't effective. Maybe I should take more. Maybe I took too much. Maybe I should start with a lower dose. This part of the presentation is going to get a little bit more into, well, where did it end up in Texas? Like, how do we have this in Texas, Shada, if you just told me that marijuana is not legal in Texas? So I'm here to explain that to you to the best of my understanding. And it's pretty simple, but kind of how it's been interpreted, I can't say is really the intent perhaps of the law. But with that said, this is kind of, what we'll go over today. So marijuana is not federally legal. Remember, 19 states have decided to legalize on their own, but you cannot cross state lines, which means if Colorado and Arizona, which are neighbor states, they both have legal recreational marijuana programs, it is still illegal federally to do interstate commerce. So you can't go across state lines with products. So as a result, also, it's not legal in Texas. Texas has not decided that we want to legalize marijuana. So we have access to marijuana, which again is classified as more than 0.3% Delta-9 THC, which is the key here. In order for Delta-9 THC to be federally legal, it has to be hemp derived, not marijuana derived, hemp derived, and less than that 0.3% by dry weight. Really want to emphasize that dry weight component. So what does that mean? So first, we must understand that hemp was federally legalized in 2018. So the legislation, the law around what we can even do as a hemp-based brand, which is all of our products at Restart CBD are hemp derived. That's why I can ship my products across state lines, is because it's hemp derived and it is less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC by weight. That's what makes it legal. And we're going to go into that. So we need to look into the 2018 Farm Bill to further understand the language for where and how Delta 9 THC is referenced and mentioned. Again, I will have links to the direct Farm Bill. This is going to be a call out in aspects of the Farm Bill that you can just kind of like go straight to see some of this messaging. This is not all on one page. I screenshotted these and I made it together. The Farm Bill is a very long bill. And the part that talks about hemp is not as long, but a bigger chunk of this. So this is cut just to kind of give you the overview and the gist. And I highlighted in red what is the important things to kind of keep in mind. So the definitions, hemp, the term hemp means the plant cannabis sativa and any part of that plant, including the seeds, all derivatives, extracts, cannabinoids, isomers, acids, salts, and salts of isomers, whether growing or not, with a Delta 9 THC concentration of not more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. So again, as long as it is hemp derived and less than 0.3% on a dry weight basis, it is federally legal. Getting into interstate commerce. Nothing in this title or an amendment made by this title prohibits the interstate commerce of hemp as defined by the definition. So as long as it is, again, less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC by dry weight, interstate commerce can happen. And then I wanted to touch on the Controlled Substance Act. So in terms, marijuana does not include hemp. So this was a really interesting discernment, right? So that's why marijuana is still on the controlled substances list as a Schedule I drug. Hemp is not a controlled substance. So they are treated different in the observation of kind of like federal understanding. So hemp is then defined as anything less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC on a dry weight basis. You're gonna really drive that point home, and you're gonna, really hopefully remember that and hear me obviously say it a lot, because that's really it. That's the critical component in why you are now seeing these products hit the market. I guess another point to kind of add, 2018 to 2022. Well, if this was the law in 2018, how did we get here in 2022? I don't have the explicit answer. I don't know the true answer of why all of a sudden now, if this has been the law since 2018, but if you've been a cannabis consumer here in Texas or other states that perhaps maybe aren't legalized, or hell, maybe you're in a legal state and you still enjoy hemp-based products. We've seen a lot of Delta 8, right? We've gone through that over the past couple of years, but no Delta 9 until really recently. I just believe that it is kind of, the evolution of the market. I think people have just, kind of realized that this is kind of what the Farm Bill says, and they are taking the next steps to actualize it and manufacture and turn it into products. So again, not an explicit like, why all of a sudden? Because we definitely get customers who are like, well, why all of a sudden? Where did this come from if this has kind of been legal since 2018? And I'm like, I don't know why, but it's here now. And this is why it is legal. So again, just kind of keep that in mind. And so again, this is just really hitting that point home. Everything that we sell at Restart CBD is going to be a hemp derived product. And the other thing to note is hemp is less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC. And then the other thing to note is marijuana and hemp both produce CBD, also Delta 9 THC, and the cannabinoid compound structure is the same. So it's the same Delta 9 THC, whether it's hemp or marijuana. It just, one is obviously a Schedule I drug and the other, thanks to the Farm Bill, is not. So here is kind of where it again continues to get a little murky. And this is quoted from a website that it was kind of like a legal report that was talking about this. And I just thought it was really relevant to kind of make sense of how do you explain this to people who are maybe not, I'm not a math person. I am a communications person. As you can tell, I love having, microphones in my face and getting to educate people, but science and math, not so much. So for example, a typical candy bar, let's say, is 60 grams would be allowed to have up to 180 milligrams of Delta 9 THC if limited to a 0.3% THC concentration by weight. So that's where the law is really interesting. It says you can have up to 0.3% by weight. So you can have a gummy this size, you can have a gummy this size, you can have a gummy, you can have a chocolate bar. By weight allows you to have more THC in it. So in this example, you could, in theory, have an energy bar that it has the legal amount of THC, 0.3%, and it will have up to 180 milligrams. I wanted to include this part. I debated not including it, but I thought that it was relevant, and I want to just speak transparently with you guys. When you're talking about the regulated marijuana markets, adult use, recreation, they are very regulated, and they are not allowed to do interstate commerce, and they are capped typically state to state. I've seen pretty consistent regulations, no more than 100 milligrams per package. So usually they're gummies, edibles, they're 10 milligrams a piece, and then there's no more than 100 milligrams. But then kind of going into the last statement, a 4-gram hemp gummy product could have 10 milligrams of Delta 9 and still be federally legal, allowable under that concentration threshold. So again, we're kind of in interesting waters here. I am not a lawyer. I am not trying to say this is this is that, this is whatever. I'm just simply trying to state what the Farm Bill actually says and what my observation is as a result of what is happening, right? So this is kind of like the next step to part of that conversation. So we do have Delta 9 THC products at Restart. I think, when you're talking about dry weight, I guess I should go to this one. You're probably, for example, not going to see cannabis flower, marijuana flower more than 0.3% Delta 9 THC in this conversation. So if you come across brands that are selling you Delta 9 THC flower and they're a hemp brand, I would probably not purchase it because that is marijuana and that is illegal. But the dry weight basis, so you'll probably only see it in edible form. I have started to see some brands are kind of like deviating, like we are introducing an oil-based product. It is a very, very low milligram dose, but for people who like to microdose, that's a solution. But more so than just kind of like highlighting, yes, we have Delta 9 products. If this is of interest to you, again, it's Delta 9 THC that is hemp derived. These are federally legal. I really wanted to articulate dosing. So this is just a sampling of our products. We have a broader set of Delta 9 THC products on our website, which you are more than welcome to explore or come shop in store. But we start out at 5 milligrams Delta 9. I go to 10 milligrams Delta 9. These are a 1-to-1 ratio. So these are actually going to be 10 milligrams of Delta 9, 10 milligrams of CBD. So it kind of cushions it. And in previous webinars, we've certainly talked about the ratio effect. And if that's a question you have, I'm happy to answer that at the end. But just to kind of understand dosing. So these are going to be pure, just Delta 9 THC, pure Delta 9 THC. These are going to be ratios 1-to-1. These are also ratio 1-to-1. So these are going to be Delta 9 THC, 15 milligrams of CBD. Give me 1 second. Also, I feel like I just hit my microphone and it's still going. My microphone is so sensitive. Sometimes it doesn't like when I accidentally touch it. So there's different doses. So going back to what's going to ultimately work best for you, it might range and it might vary. So I encourage you to always start low, always start with a micro dose. So even if you buy a higher dose product, maybe eat less, maybe eat half of it, maybe eat a quarter of it. So you can always take more, you can't take less. And especially when you're dealing with edibles, edibles are known to have other longer ongoing effects. And so I just want you guys to be like prepared to know this is a psychotropic cannabinoid and you might feel the psychotropic effects. So always kind of ease into it. But if there was anything that we shared in the webinar that you're like, oh, I have this, disease or ailment, or I got this diagnosis and maybe Delta 9 THC could help, I encourage you to continue to do further research to explore what that looks like for you or your loved ones. So that was kind of like the tea about Delta 9 THC. Of course, I want to leave you guys with some resources and some other pieces of information. If you have questions that you maybe don't want me to answer live right here, please email us, info@restartcbd.com. Myself, my team, we're very equipped to help answer or guide you in the right direction. So if that's of interest, definitely send us an email. You can also join our Facebook group. It is a private Facebook group. It's a little bit more of a community. And you can just go to Facebook and literally type in secret Restart CBD group. And there's just a great group of people who are just equally canna curious and want to share resources and education. And so we really appreciate being able to have that space as well for these conversations to continue to evolve. The other thing I always love to mention, talk to our team. My team is so knowledgeable. They are on the front lines every day, talking to you guys, talking to our consumers, getting feedback, hearing and learning what's working, what's not working. Whether you want to call us, our phone number is on our website, on our social media platforms. Whether you want to DM us on Instagram, our website has a live chat function during business hours. My team mans that, and they are super, super quick and want to take care of your questions and make sure, maybe you're on the site and you're like, I have a question between product A or product B. They're a great resource to kind of start engaging with. So please take advantage of them. They love to educate and talk to you guys. The other thing that's also a really great value add, like I mentioned, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional. My team is not a doctor or medical professional. So we took the step to partner with Leaf 411. They are a Colorado based nurse run cannabis hotline. They're wonderful. They partner with top leading cannabis brands like Wana, if you're familiar with Wana brands in Colorado, all the way through brands in California and other states here and there. And so we really wanted to invest in this partnership. So we are a member of theirs, and we invest in their resources. And it's, as a result, a service to you guys. So they are no longer free by going to their website. If you want the code, you can actually send us an email to info@restartcbd, and we will share you the code. Then your consultation will be free. They're just getting such an influx of interest that they are trying to accommodate people. And since we are a paying member, that's again a benefit, a value add to our customers, to our community. So if you're interested in talking to a cannabis nurse who understands the Restart CBD products, who understands, kind of the medical professional world, they are a wonderful resource that we love being able to reference and make available to you guys. Also, just heads up, if you love our webinar series, please check out our next webinar. It's going to be on how to travel with cannabis. This question comes up a lot when we are talking to customers and just out in the community. People are like, well, can I travel with this? Can I bring my CBD oil with me? What about my flower? What about my gummies? And we love to have this conversation. So we said, let's make a webinar about it and talk about it. So you can go ahead and sign up for that at restartcbd.com/webinar. And then if you want to check out previous webinars, like I've been teasing out some of our webinars, they are on our YouTube page, but we did go ahead and make an events page. So we'll be listing all of our webinars on there, as well as have the videos front and center for you to tune into. And so just to give you kind of like a reference, our last two webinars were on THCV. And then the one before that was on terpenes, cannabinoids, and flavonoids. So also want to make it available. If you guys have any thoughts or topics for future webinars, feel free to send us an email, call us, slide into the DMs. We are always wanting to make content that is relevant for you guys. I mean, I don't want to just make a video to talk about something. I want to make sure that it's of value to you guys. So I appreciate you guys tuning into this conversation today as well. And then as a reward, thank you for joining this webinar. $5 off 50. You can shop restartcbd.com. D9 webinar is going to be the code. It is going to be good for the next, till end of June, I think is when I set the expiration date. So this is just, a small token of appreciation. We love to obviously have your business, but we want to make it a little bit of a sweet deal for spending your time and educating with us today. So if you are shopping with us, maybe you're a regular, this code will work for you. Feel free to go add it to cart. D9 webinar for $5 off 50. And now we're going to get into the questions. So I am going to stop screen sharing, and I am going to go into our, let me see, chat right here. So someone said, I tried Delta 8, but didn't feel any effect. Thank you for this. I know nothing about Delta 9. So yeah, kind of going into a little bit like what is the difference between Delta 9 THC and Delta 8 THC. They are, if you can imagine again, like that slide where I just showed kind of like the chemical structure of what it looks like. It's just, it has one less tail. It has one less line. So chemically they are very similar, but ultimately we know that those chemical structures can vary in how they affect our bodies. I would say anecdotally, what I've kind of observed about Delta 8 versus Delta 9 Sometimes people observe that Delta 8 is a little bit more intense, a little bit more heavy, versus Delta 9, which is kind of a little bit more neutral. And then there's even Delta 10. So again, not to confuse you guys or make it even more overwhelming to kind of understand. But yeah, there are different cannabinoids and they might perhaps affect your body differently or be more effective one way or the other. And so I think that's just kind of, something to kind of highlight and recommend that is out there. There's different cannabinoids. Again, some people don't like THC. They don't like the high effect. They don't like being out of control. And that's okay. I love those people knowing that they can try cannabis and not feel that they have to be psychotropically high or anything. That's the benefit of, CBD or even CBG and other things like that. And so it's just something to kind of like, kind of be open-minded to and to continue to explore. And so kind of on that vein, the next question is, someone said, I tried the CBD CBG combo to help with sleep and I took 2 gummies and I didn't feel any effects. I'm feeling apprehensive to up the dosage. Is there a different Restart product you can recommend for relaxing sleep? Yeah. So I would say kind of think about it like this too. So you mentioned CBG. I personally wouldn't say that CBG is like the best cannabinoid for sleep. Actually, CBN is known to be even more of a sleep aid. And again, just like disclaimer, like please go go continue to do like more research, like educate yourself and learn, what these different cannabinoids are beyond just like what I'm saying. But yeah, someone else just added CBN. So I would say try CBN. The other thing to note, kind of like within reason, you can't overdose on cannabis. The side effect of too much cannabis is drowsiness. So for me, CBD works really effectively to help me sleep. I also don't have a hard time sleeping necessarily, but I do use cannabis for sleep. So I always tell people to try CBD. And for reference, I take about 60 milligrams to 100 milligrams of CBD before bed, and it helps knock me out. So if you're apprehensive of dosing, how much to take, how many gummies to take, I think that can be something that even if you don't want to try too much CBG, you can try just more CBD, or go on and try CBN to see if that cannabinoid, which I know that we have a CBD, CBN gummy as well. Someone says, I was always told Delta 8 was no effects. So do the ratios 1-to-1 or more give you the high effect? Also need to learn more on the ratios and dosing. So maybe ratios and dosing would be a great next webinar. So I'm happy to kind of like put that in our queue and see what we can do to answer that for you guys. But again, always kind of take it with like a grain of salt. Like every cannabinoid is going to interact differently with your body's biochemistry. So like mentioned, I feel really, really sleepy and really heavy when I take Delta 8. And I have some customers who are like, I take Delta 8 and I go, clean my whole house. And I'm like, you are crazy. That is not the effect that my body feels. So with that, I would say you are going to kind of have to explore and see. So if you try Delta 8 and it didn't work for you, it could be the dosage, it could be the form factor. So again, an edible is going to take time to digest versus a sublingual oil is going to absorb sublingually versus a smokable, you're going to inhale it and feel it faster. And so I think those are things just to kind of like keep in consideration. So that way you, like if you want to obviously like feel the high effect, then like that's what you're chasing. If you're looking for other effects, then that's also what you're chasing. So I would say it can come down to a combination of those things. But yeah, dosing, ratios. I always recommend like journaling. I think it sounds really rudimentary, but being able to just, I took, 5 milligrams of this product at 10 a.m. And how did I feel? Did I feel anything? And then do that for a couple of days. And if you're not noticing a change, then increase intake more and kind of play around with it from there. But yeah, there is certainly lots to explore when it comes to cannabis. And that's where I'm always trying to be like really cautious. It's not a transactional approach, unfortunately. It can be sometimes, and it can be for other, like depending on what you're taking it for, it can be situational. Like, hey, I need to feel better. I need to sleep right now. I'm going to take this and I'm going to be knocked out. But in some cases, it takes time to build up in your system. That gets into titration, that gets into bioavailability, certainly ratios and dosing and all those things. So someone is asking, is there anything that can be done to help with dry mouth effect when I take D8 for sleep? I find myself needing to wake up to drink water, and then it is a little challenging to get back to sleep. I don't want to take another dose of D8 to get back to sleep because then I wake up groggy. So that's an interesting one because I think kind of like in the industry, the culture is kind of like calling it cotton mouth. So your mouth just gets like really, really dry. I personally haven't really found a solution for it. So I don't really have a like, do this and it's not going to happen again. But I would say, I'm sure you're probably drinking a ton of water like right before you're sleeping. So that's not helping. But so someone in the chat, Carly, she works with us. I had her jump on the webinar to just help be attentive to everything. And she said high chews. So maybe trying a high chew after you take your D8 before you go to sleep and see if that helps. So we'll have to all give that a try. But yeah, I think you're not alone is the point I'm trying to make. Cottonmouth is a thing. And if that's maybe even a term that's new to you, go research cottonmouth and see if there's ways to mitigate the effects of cottonmouth when you consume THC products. Yeah, the struggle is real. I know. Sometimes you're just like, my mouth is just so dry. And also I think another point to make too, right? Like the like THC is an appetite stimulant, which for some people who maybe are having a hard time eating, maybe they're going through chemotherapy, they obviously want to stimulate their appetite. But then there's some people who maybe don't want their appetite stimulated, but that's just kind of like a natural effect, I would say, of THCs in general. And so I would just kind of add to that of like, that can maybe be some of the negative effects of like consuming these cannabinoids. So you have to kind of like be mindful, mitigate it. For example, I just keep a lot of really healthy snacks in the house, knowing that if the munchies hit, at least I'm, eating nuts and oranges and not going for the cookies. Although I certainly go for the cookies every now and then. So that is something that I wanted to mention as well. So, okay, someone else asked, how is the D9 made? So there are a couple different ways to make Delta 9, similar to how Delta 8 is made. You can I'm really clear to not use the word synthetic because there are going to be synthetic products out there. And there's also, it can go through a synthesis. Again, all these are cannabinoid compounds or different structures. So through pressure and heat and time, you can really convert anything. So kind of going on to CBN really quick, CBN is a degradation of actually Delta 9 THC. So if you've ever had like cannabis, anything like in a shelf and you forgot about it, and it's like in a box, and then like you revisit it like weeks, months later, and it's maybe a little bit more drier, but you're like, I'm still going to smoke this and try this product. That has actually degraded into CBN. So usually you feel it a little bit more heavy, a little bit more heady. And that's because the CBN is present. So these are real cannabinoids that are also able to convert on their own. So I don't think that synthesizing is a negative term. I think that it is how, sometimes these conversions happen, but RD9 is naturally occurring in the cannabis plant. So it is extracted from hemp. So again, when you're growing hemp and marijuana, Delta 9 exists naturally in the plants, and you can extract them through the extraction process. And so ours go through CO2 extraction. And so this is naturally occurring Delta 9. And then our products are available on our website. All COAs should be available on our website. If you don't see something, let us know. Our D9 products are fairly new, so we are adding them in. And full disclosure, we're a small family brand, so we are adding our products. I'm personally one. Anytime you see new photos being updated on the website, it's me. I have a little camera I'm taking pictures of and updating them. And so we're trying to associate all of our COAs, all of our information, all of our resources. As other questions come up, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Like we said, info@restartcbd.com. Otherwise, are there any other questions? I want to make sure that I address everybody, but really also want to be respectful of your time. Thanks for sticking around for the last 46 minutes as we learned about Delta 9 THC. I hope this was really helpful and informative to give you some understanding around what are these new products and what are these really new cannabinoids. And I'm really mindful also of new cannabinoids. Delta 9, again, is not new by any means. It is a naturally occurring cannabinoid that has been in the cannabis plant infinitely. And so it's just now, again, coming to market in this capacity. And so as these cannabinoids come to market, we want to make sure that you're familiar with them. And especially with it being, so popular kind of in the marijuana conversation at large from a national kind of perspective and level, it's definitely one of those products that I think people are really curious about and people want to have access to. And so I'm really grateful that we were able to have access to these cannabinoids here in Texas. And so someone really quick was asking, can I order your products from New York? Yes, you can order our products from New York. We do ship nationwide. Again, there might be certain products that we can't ship. So for example, vape products. I cannot ship vape products out of the state because of the PACT Act. So if you want to go spend some time researching the PACT Act and understanding that, it's a little bit of a headache and a half, but there are, again, just certain products I can't ship because like the PACT Act says I can't ship vapable products, but my edibles, my flour, my topicals, my oils, we can ship all of that to New York, no problem. So thank you guys for asking these great questions. And then someone said, thank you so much for sharing all this valuable information. You were awesome. Thank you guys. You guys are awesome. Like I said, I really appreciate the opportunity to get to be in a position to educate and just really share thoughtful conversations with you guys. I don't want to position myself as the end all be all person who knows everything. I just want to be someone who aggregates information and literally just like gives it out to the community to take advantage of and make sense of it on their own. So thank you guys. Really appreciate your time and energy. If you want a copy of this webinar, it'll be emailed to you along with the deck. As questions come up, please reach out. Otherwise, I will see you guys next month for another webinar. Remember, it is on how to travel with cannabis. Bye, y'all.